Last one is by Niklaus Pangilinan. Ew! Oh! This one's nuts too. What the hell? Ew! What the hell was that? Okay. This absolute wild boy of audio as a remix. What Niklaus did was amazing.
So with remix competitions, the one thing that'll automatically set you apart from everyone else is changing the BPM and the genre. You want to get it to sound as different from the original as possible, but also obviously sound good. The original was 130 BPM, I changed it to 166. Let's look at the vocals first.
We be talking, we be on it.
So what I did with this is I have two vocals layered on each other. One of them, I have a pitcher on it and the formant is shifted up. This is changing the gender of the voice. It would sound like this originally,
We be talking,
but if I add the formant shift, it sounds like this.
we be talking, we be on it.
And I think this other layer is the normal. So these layered, it just sounds more bright and colorful. I cut up the vocals so it kind of like stutters. And for the automation, I have a panning on that. So it goes from left ear to right ear to left. I also slightly pitch corrected all of his vocals. Nothing was wrong with it originally, but I think it just sounds better if it's more robotic. There's a hardcore guitar amp on the vocals at the beginning. I have an EQ notch on the vocal, taking out the mid-range a little bit. I added another vocal with a pitcher that's brought down to the male gender formant. It's got this dark sound. I also have a distortion on all the vocals for this part. It's just grittier and more raw. And this vocal right here is actually pitched down 5 semitones. So it's like this cool harmony. So for this part, the beat like really slaps, and that's because what I do with the vocal is I cut it so that there's a moment of silence in between every word. It just hits way harder than if his words were flowing into each other. And what I'm doing with the automation, I'm adding delay in certain parts. I have a delay with the time set to 8. But then I have another delay that's quadruple that time.
Great. Everything is fine, but do not play.
It just like adds more dynamic to the delays instead of just having one. I also have some reverb automation so that it just builds.
Enjoy the party right now, but please don't give your love to me.
I also chopped up his vocals a lot too. See, for this part, I just cut a little segment of his voice, of me, and then I replayed it right here. And then here I just went crazy with the chops. And actually for the verse part, the rap part, I slowed it down so it's twice as slow. I have a filter on his voice.
Passion is cool, but the iPad is dope.
Taking out all the low and the high leaves this like radio frequency. I have one of the delays triggering here at all the downbeats.
For what you will be left behind. If you move closer, it will be on the minds.
And then here I just went crazy with the vocal chops.
Man.
Now with this vocal chop, it's kind of lit. This is just him saying mind. But I have a sausage fattener with the color all the way up and fatness to like 33. I have a noise gate on it so it mutes it when it gets to a certain threshold. And this part right here is pretty cool. It does this like crazy like mind. And for that I have a gross beat that gets triggered and it's just 1/3 gate. And I also have a panning, so it pans from your left ear to your right ear. What I do here is I just use his normal voice with no formant shifting on it. I have an automation where it shifts the formant from male to female, so it gives this like cool like effect. Kendrick Lamar uses this a lot actually. And then end with the delay, both of them actually. So that's the vocals. Here's the melody and bass. So it starts with this kind of psychedelic vibe. It's this guitar right here. I think it's one of the default FL Studio plugins. But what I do is I put a filter on it and I automate the filter. Right here you can see it. It's like a wave. And if it wasn't added, it would sound like this. So that's cool. Another thing I have is this bass. I actually adjusted the pitch parameters. It's like kind of like this slide. And then here I just have the chords. I didn't really change much about the chords, but just with a Rhodes piano. I have this pluck instrument that I made in 3X oscillator. I actually use this like for almost everything. It's really powerful and super underrated. I feel like this is just 2 saw waves and a triangle wave with some detune. Oh, and the pitch, it kind of sounds like it bends up very quickly. There's like that tension. I just have it raise an octave and the attack is really short. I have this synth here, that's pretty cool. Also 3X OSC. There's a modulation on it, so that's why it's making that wow sound, you know? I have this synth that just provides a little bit of some high end coming in later in the song. Here's the bass, which is also pretty simple. I have different patterns of it, so there's more variation. This is right before the drop. It's kind of like this chromatic step up. And it just comes out of nowhere. It's like very unexpected. One thing I did want to show about the bass, I have an automation that right here, halfway through this little section, it enables a distortion and a flanger on the bass. It sounds weird, but this is what it sounds like if I solo it. It just surrounds you more, and it just builds this feeling of the beat building to something. And you can't even really notice it that much when everything else is unmuted. And you could tell that it wobbles a bit more. That's the most noticeable thing. During the drops, I have sort of an A-B format. The A sections are kind of like the hard drum parts. During the B sections, I have a melody playing, and it's like kind of like a synth solo, if you want to call it that. This is another synth I made in 3X OSC. I don't know how to play piano, I just clicked it on my mouse. These strings come in this orchestral section. First I have a string section. It's just the chords again, the same exact chords. The string solo, which is high above. This sort of crescendo builds to when the string section comes in, so it sounds grand and wide when it comes in. I have this, I call it a boop synth. It just sounds like a boop, you know? It plays on the offbeats and gives this nice swing, you know? Also 3X OSC. This has a pitch modulation of going down, but it's super quick so you can't notice. It just gives more boop to it, I guess. I actually have a note missing here. There should be a note playing right there, but instead I exported just one note. I reversed it and I pitched it correctly to whatever the melody should be. Every third note of the measure is reversed. And it just sounds really cool. I have a brass come in building up to the second drop. There's another synth solo. There's another one here. This one is super chromatic. There's like a lot of notes being played out of the scale, but it still sounds good because it just gives this like, you know, soulful, bluesy vibe. And then the outro, there's this other synth that's also 3X OSC. I named it the bend synth, and it's because the pitch bends up. So that's what that sounds like. And during this whole time, the last synth solo is playing, and this I have layered, so this is the first sound. This is the second. This one just, the second one has just more of that resonance, that voice feeling to it. So when it's layered, it just sounds more full and textured. I also have these slides, these long slides. It just gives off the vibe like it's like almost like an electric guitar solo. In the miscellaneous tab, I have the polyphony and the porta is turned on and the slide is up for I think both of them. So if this was off, it would sound like this. Where if it was on, it sounds like this. It just like bends into the notes. And yeah, that's the melody and bass. Here's the percussion. It starts off hitting as drum and bass. The hi-hats are not quantized exactly on beat. It's slightly off by a third. If it was on beat, it would sound like this. Which is boring. Slightly taking it off the beat just adds more life and bounce. And then the drop when it comes in, I changed up the snare. I got this snare instead, Murder Beats, and I have an 808 that's pretty hard. Again, the hi-hats are less frequent, but they're still off the beat. You gotta have the 808 slide somewhere for Simon Servida contest, you know? And during the drop, there's also this pitched percussion. It's those sounds together. I automated it so it slowly pitches downward, so it's got this like chromatic feeling. All in the background, I have this one noise. It's not really a percussion. Drum and bass comes back in for the orchestral section. Then again, another drop. The thing about these percussions too is they're also not quantized and off the beat, like by a lot. You can see like some of them more than others. They're not all equally offbeat, and it's also offbeat from the percussion that it's layered with. It adds more of this water droplet texture. If it was both completely on, it would sound like this, which is boring, but this sounds better. And this part, the drums kind of just go crazy. There's like this whole new vibe to it. It's more bouncy. And then the end, I just have some kicks hitting during that synth solo. But I also have it layered with the stomps, which are in the FX section, which I'm gonna get to now. So these are the effects. So starting the song, I'll just have the vocals unmuted. You know, I just have these just simple things from sample packs I found. It's just so simple to just drag and drop things and just instantly make your song have more production value. And this little effect right here, it perfectly blends into the vocals coming up.
Bad lungs, bad eyes.
I have these silence pistols hitting at the offbeats just to add just more bounce, you know. Here is kind of cool. So instead of having the shell just hit right there, as it usually would, I duplicated the shell sound and I just pitched it down so it sounds like this. And I just shortened it and then added the regular one after. And yeah, the stomps that I was talking about, here they are. It's just this sound. Super hard and cinematic, but layered with the kicks, it's even harder. And I have this reverse snare going into some of them. It builds to the end. And I mean, I got a lot of automation on this, but it's just all small little details. This is the vocal distortion, and along with that, when you add distortion on vocals, it's going to bring out a lot of high and low frequencies that you don't want in the mix. So I also enable an EQ on the vocals whenever the distortion is there. So as you can see, it mirrors the distortion. This is what would it sound like if there was no EQ.
Cause down the road you won't be loving me.
It's just a little more muddy. You just want to take out that low end and some of the highs from that distortion. And if you don't, that could like kind of muddy your mix. Even the automation could emphasize grooves. I have an automation, just automating the volume. It's more staccato, it just cuts off that little bit of tail reverb, you know? So you can take away the volume of something and just make it hit harder by using silence. Like right there. Let's talk about the master. So with the master, this is usually what my masters look like. There's no right or wrong way to do it. This is just how I do it. So the first thing I do is I'll put on a EQ. Usually I won't add a little notch on the high end part, but for this one, I just felt like it needs to be a little crispier than usual, so you just add that notch. But you want to take off frequencies in that range that's too high to even hear with the human ear, and too low. And then I have a sausage fattener, which it's basically like a compressor limiter thing. I didn't even adjust the fatness or the color, I just kept it all at 0. Yeah, so look, it's going above 0, everything, and that's without sausage fattener. With it, it stops at 0, but it doesn't sound like it's over compressed. Then above the limiter I have a Maximus, just this simple master, nothing crazy. Without it, it sounds like this. And with it, everything's just so much harder. I understand that sometimes it is like kind of bordering on being too cluttered or too busy, but I feel like that's the nature of beat contests or remix contests. Everyone else entering the contest is also a producer, and you're being judged probably by producers, and you just want to secure that win by just making a producer type beat. And that's exactly what I did. And obviously you don't have to do that. You can make a really lit song that isn't as crazy or complex, but this is definitely one way to win, is just trying to flex everything that you know about producing and creating the most crazy, ear candy, chaotic thing that you can. But yeah, that's the breakdown of the song. Shout out every other producer that got in the top 10. You guys killed it, especially Quinny Beats. Like, we gotta collab, bro. Hit me up. I just want to thank Simon Servida and his Twitch chat. You guys are amazing. Thank you for picking me. And yeah, I think that's it.